Welcome to Vin and Mike, episode 30. Mike, how are you today?
What's up, Vin? How you doing?
Doing great. Lots going on here tonight. We're going to dive into those MLB trades on the second half part of the show. It's just a lot going on. Right before we came on the air, a lot of crazy trades as we hit the 6 o'clock Eastern deadline, which we're at right now. So a lot of fun stuff going on. But we're gonna dig into college football to start the show. But before we bring on our guest, let me just do our Viggy Bets commercial here real quick. So Vin and Mike is brought to you by Viggy Bets. Check out Viggy Bets on Twitter and Instagram at Viggy Bets. If you DM Viggy Bets now that you're a fan of Vin and Mike, you receive a 14-day free trial with a new VIP membership. And Viggy will be joining us on August 16th show, so that'll be a fun show. Also, Vin and Mike is now on KKFI in Kansas City. We're here on YouTube live for everybody, Facebook, Twitch, and then always you can catch us Spotify, Apple Podcast, and wherever you get your podcast. And check out Vin and Mike now, vinandmikepodcast.com. So real excited today that we're also part of the Pigskin Podcast Network, and one of our fellow Pigskin Podcast Network people are here with us from the South Endzone Podcast, and that'd be Jason Bailey. Jason, how are you, brother?
I'm doing great, guys. How are y'all doing, man? You staying? Is it as hot in New York as it is down south down here?
It's pretty brutal, I must say.
Yeah.
But I'd rather have hot than cold any day.
Yeah, me too. I agree. I went to the Braves game. That would have been 2 weekends ago, and it was straight up scorching. It was brutal. So,
yeah, that's not the fun time for me to go to baseball games. I always try to avoid them unless somebody wants to give me a nice ticket that I can use some of the suites or the restaurants or something. Then I'm more than happy to go. So Jason's show, so everyone knows, South Endzone Podcast, concentrates really on college football, and we're excited to have him here to talk a little college football. I know CBS came out with their pre-rankings today, and just to, they want to give you a little insight, as Alabama came out as the number one team in the country, which I think is not shocking to anyone. Jason, what do you think? Are they truly the number one team in the country?
Well, I'll say this much about them. I mean, I've been an Alabama fan my entire life, and I'm not one of those dudes who will just go on a show, especially our show, and pump up how good they are, because no one wants to hear that. But just based on what they've got coming back, they probably should be ranked number one, given that Georgia lost so much on defense. But I'm always a proponent of, if you just won the championship and you're bringing back a ton of talent, you're pretty much number one until proven otherwise. So I wouldn't be mad if Georgia was ranked one. To me, honestly, preseason rankings mean nothing. It's just people's opinions. And I've always said, we shouldn't have rankings until week 8, because it doesn't matter what someone's ranked. I mean, you can rank Texas number one for all I care, but if they lose to Kansas, then, well, clearly they're not number one. But, it should be, the typical names in 1, 2, 3. You could rank Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia 1, 2, 3, however you like. Where I think it gets really interesting is the sort of that next tier of teams where there's a smattering of others, be it Clemson, Texas A&M, Oregon, Utah, there's Notre Dame, there's several others that, will make a push to be that sort of last playoff team this year. So that's kind of where we're at to start the year.
Yeah. What did you think about this whole Jumbo Fisher, Saban controversy, A&M, Alabama, recruits, the whole thing? What's some of your thoughts about that?
Well, we put out a show about it, like a sort of an instant reaction when it all went down. I think it's a little bit prima donna-ish to call a press conference and publicly just crush another college football coach. Clearly, these coaches say lots of things when they're at a booster event. They're trying to drum up interest and things like that. And when Nick Saban comes out and says, well, Texas A&M bought their entire recruiting class, whether that may be true or not, he's saying it to a group of boosters, and he's trying to get money from them so he can give kids NIL deals. It's not like he's over there saying, well, we don't do it that way. No, well, you kind of do. They're all doing the same thing, really. I mean, whether it be Alabama or A&M or whoever. But as far as Jimbo, his reaction, it was textbook Jimbo, where he goes over the top and tries to be, a little bit flamboyant. And it doesn't work for me. And we sort of crushed him on our show about it. But, all in all, I think it's just for show. I think he's trying to drum up interest in the program and, make headlines and, just make Texas A&M a little bit more popular to recruits and things like that. But I don't really see the point. I mean, most recruits nowadays, it's all about one thing. How much NIL money can you give me?
That's right.
Yeah.
Jason, getting back to you were talking about that second tier right there. Who do you think, in your opinion, could be the biggest surprise this year?
Biggest surprise? I mean, it's kind of Clemson shouldn't be a surprise to anyone given the level of talent that they have. I think they're a little bit underrated. They are basically good quarterback play away from going undefeated. Last year, their quarterback play was abysmal. DJ Uiagalelei was not great. He threw 10 touchdowns to 11 picks. So if he even remotely improves, they have a great chance to go undefeated. I mean, they had sort of a down season and they won 10 games last year. So I think they'll be much better this year personally. But NC State, also in the ACC, is kind of a surprise team. They're bringing back a ton of talent, 17 starters. And Devin Leary is going to be probably an NFL guy, I would think. I mean, I think he'll get a shot to start somewhere, maybe not right away, but I think he's really talented. And they are also in the same boat, but they've got to go through Clemson. So, they've got a great chance to win double-digit games, make some noise. I mean, it's not completely out of the realm that they could go undefeated if everything broke right for them. So something to look like that. And then, of course, the teams that everybody want to know are USC and Texas. USC got Lincoln Riley, and they got all that talent, all those transfers, and it'll be really interesting to see if he can take that big melting pot of transfers and make it into an elite football team. I'll believe it when I see it. So, and then as far as Texas goes, there's a lot of hype around that program. They could be a surprise, I guess, in the Big 12, but I'm not buying it until I see them play some defense. I don't think, they've got a great, quarterback who has never taken a college snap at this point, but he's one of the, highest touted prospects ever. But even if he's great, they got to show me they can tackle somebody before I'm buying that.
What do you think about Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman up there? Do you think they'll be able to crack the playoffs this year?
Well, I think defensively speaking, I think Notre Dame will be really good again. I think Freeman is doing some really good things. I think it was really smart of Notre Dame to hire him, from within and not go out after losing Brian Kelly and pay some new guy millions of dollars. They jumped right on and they hired Freeman. It was a seamless transition. His players love him. So I think that was a smart move by them. And I think Notre Dame, it's kind of the same story with them every year, even under Kelly. They are always, to me, like an elite quarterback away from being a national championship contender. Like we've seen them run through their schedule. They've won 11 games, 5-6 times in the last 8 seasons. And they get to the playoffs and they get blown out. And I think the reason for that is they just don't have an elite quarterback, and they still don't. Tyler Buckner probably going to start this year. We'll see, but they should win the majority of their games again. But until like I said, defensively, I think they'll be really good. But offensively, until I see them go out and just, be able to dominate a team with a great defense, then I don't know. That Clemson or that Ohio State game in week 1 it's going to tell us a lot about Notre Dame because they're at Ohio State week 1. So no bigger test than that facing that offense. Did I freeze up, guys?
Any?
Oh, I'm sorry. I froze up. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State. You mentioned you mentioned USC. Those were a couple of teams that I think could make some noise. I like to look at individual players, and I think we always look at the Heisman as something to judge people on. I guess in Bryce Young and Stroud will be the favorites to take the Heisman. Is there anybody that you see that could possibly jump into the race with those two guys?
Well, we talked a little bit about this on our show recently, just looking at the Heisman overall and some of the odds. CJ Stroud is the betting favorite currently. Now, I haven't looked at him in the last few days, so I don't know what he's at, if it's plus 250 or whatever it may be. But I know Stroud's the betting favorite. Young is sort of right behind him. I think this is going to be one of those seasons where we could see like a dark horse Heisman guy, because I think Ohio State has so much talent on offense that really, like, they're going to steal votes from each other. I mean, you've got CJ Stroud, but you've also got Jackson Smith and Jigba. You've also got Travion Henderson. It's a massive group of talent there, and I just don't think one guy can steal the show there. And Bryce Young, I just wouldn't bet on him because there's only been one repeat Heisman winner ever. So not something I would bet on. But I look at a guy like, who would be a good name? Like Jordan Addison at USC might be a good name. He's got a lot of hype. His name's out there. If he goes up and wins the Blitnikoff again, there's a chance he could be up for the Heisman. Bijan Robinson at Texas is probably going to put up video game numbers this year. But realistically, the Heisman is a popularity contest, and it boils down to a very small group of teams. And the only Heisman winner that has not been on a playoff team since the playoffs inception was Lamar Jackson. And his season was just absolutely ridiculous monster numbers. So it's going to take some just crazy out of reality type of season from someone who's not on a Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, one of those top tier teams, to be able to win it.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's a big popularity contest and all that. If everyone goes into the NFL draft and things play out where the first overall pick needs a quarterback, who do you think is the one that's most NFL ready?
Well, if I was going to pick an NFL ready guy, I tend to lean on experience, guys who have been starting for a while. However, I don't really think you could go wrong if you were to draft CJ Stroud first overall. I mean, I think he's just insanely talented. And the same with Bryce Young. Young, a little bit more of a concern because of his size. He's kind of a small guy. He's about 6 foot tall, and he doesn't look that tall. But, I like Devin Leary a lot from NC State. Like I said, I think he'll be an NFL guy. And, there's a lot of hype for Caleb Williams, at USC. But I'm not really a buyer of that quite yet, or him or Spencer Rattler for that matter, because we've seen them be really good, but then we've seen where they meet a great defense and they're very pedestrian. So I don't know that this is a really deep QB class beyond Young and Stroud and, like I say, Leary. But I mean, the only other guy that I would consider for like an NFL type gig, if I was putting a team together, would be Sam Hartman at Wake Forest. They run a very complex offensive scheme. And while it's not similar to an NFL type scheme, it takes a big, a real cerebral QB to be able to run that type of offense. So I think Hartman may get a look in the NFL as well.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask you, it seems like a team that kind of flies under the radar is Utah, and they're the reigning Pac-12 champion, a good quarterback. What do you think it's going to take for them to really compete this year? I know the preseason ranking doesn't mean too much, but they've moved up and there's been a lot of hype about them. So what do you think they really need to really compete this year?
Well, they've got to beat two teams, in my opinion. They have to beat Florida in week 1, and they have to beat Oregon, whenever they play them, wherever that's at on their schedule. I'm not sure if they even play them in the regular season. I'd actually have to look at their schedule really quick. I've got it right in front of me, actually, at some point. Well, I can't find it. Either way,
they certainly open against Florida, so that's crucial, huge.
Yeah. So if they beat Florida, there's a really good chance they could go undefeated. I mean, you've got Oregon and USC as the only really other two factors in the Pac-12. But for Utah, it's the same kind of story as every other Pac-12 team here recently. It's pretty much go undefeated or bust as far as the playoff goes. So I think they're talented enough to play with anybody. I mean, we saw it in the Rose Bowl last year. They went toe-to-toe with Ohio State and, lost in the final minute of the game. So I think Utah, I would love to see them make the playoffs. I think they're really talented. I think Cam Rising is a really, really good player. I don't know that, he's not the guy that's going to set the world on fire statistically. He's not going to go out and throw for 500 yards and 4 touchdowns like Stroud does. But the guy just has the stuff, man. He's got the leadership stuff where you're just like, that guy's a player, and I want him on my football team. So I think they'll be a really exciting team to watch, and they're bringing back a ton of talent. So should be fun, man. I'm looking forward to watching them play Florida.
I watched some of their games last year, and he did a phenomenal job taking over for Brewer. But I think people really know Utah for their defense, and their passing was kind of marginal. So he really, if he could step it up along with that defense, I think they're going to be legitimate contenders. I truly do. So.
I agree. It starts and ends with Tavion Thomas, their running back. I mean, that dude he is a grown man. he's going to put up monster numbers running the ball this year. So it'll be really interesting to see.
Yeah. Thanks.
I know USC's got Lincoln Riley and brought all these guys in. I know you mentioned them and all that, but they were 4-8 last year. Do they take that big of a step up? I mean, they're already in the top 25 in the preseason rankings and everything. And like you said, they shouldn't rank anyone to week 8. But is this a team that is legitimately going to make that kind of noise?
I don't think so, Vin. I really don't. We spoiler alert on our Pac-12 preview. I think we all three took the under on their 8.5, or I think it's a 9.5 win total. Yeah, 9.5. So we all took the under, 9-3 at best type season. I don't see them making that big of a jump because it's kind of the same sort of thing you see, like the Washington Redskins are guilty of this kind of thing, or excuse me, the Commanders. They are guilty of going out and signing a ton of free agents and trying to put a team together with no draft picks and a ton of highly paid free agents. And well, they're almost never elite. They can never put it all together. So when I see a guy who's brought in 17 transfers from other schools, I just wonder, how well are they really going to gel? Now, the thing working in their favor is that they play in the Pac-12. And the Pac-12 is just, quite frankly, not very good. There's a lot of teams that are very, low in the talent realm, and also they lack, elite coaching. So with a guy like Lincoln Riley and seemingly unlimited resources at this point, they should take somewhat of a step forward, but I'm just not going to buy them being some kind of playoff contender until I see it. They're the ESPN darlings every year. USC needs to be ranked even though they went 4-8. No, they don't. They stunk. They were terrible. Stop trying to rank them. No. And we on our show, we get so frustrated with teams like that in Texas. It's like, who at Texas has ESPN in their pocket enough that they should be ranked in the top 10. They went 5-7 and lost to Kansas. Why are they ranked? it's so frustrating. And we're just like, no, preseason rankings mean nothing, man. But to your point, USC, it's more of a show me first and then I'll believe it.
Yeah. It's funny, Texas has that huge television network down there. They supposedly generate more money than any college football program because they own the television network. So I could see why they get ranked up there, because they just have the cash that flows through there that helps them have those conversations with some of these analysts and everything. So
yeah, and it doesn't seem to help them win any games.
No, it doesn't. They don't get those key players in there. Tell the audience a little bit about your podcast. Where I know you're part of the network, but tell us how long you've been around, and give me some insights on that.
Yeah, so I started this podcast about a year ago with, just over a year ago with two guys that I serve with in the military years ago. So we just decided, hey, we're just going to we talk about football all the time. Let's just make a podcast about it. So it's actually, grown well beyond what we thought it would ever be. But so we decided to call it the South Endzone Podcast, and we sort of focus it mainly on college football betting. That's sort of the main focus, what it's, sort of hinges on every week. We'll make some picks and then talk about our picks from the previous week. And, we'll pick overs and unders and spreads and that kind of stuff. But we also, I would say it's not the most family friendly show. If you got kids in the car, you might want to wait to listen until you're alone, that kind of thing. Cause it's not filtered. It's very raw, that kind of thing. We're not afraid to crush a coach or a team and use some foul language doing it. So it's more of a just sort of a lighthearted, we don't take ourselves too seriously college football show. Not what you'd find on ESPN, but we've seen some good growth and we really enjoyed doing it. And we hope it continues to get bigger, man.
That's awesome. Vinny and I have the same kind of story. We said when we started our podcast, it was more about whenever we would talk on the phone, we always talk sports. We just kept talking sports. And one day we just were having drinks and we're just like, well, how about we start a podcast? So it's the same thing. And like you said, Jason, that what we've done in 6 months, I mean, it's just unbelievable, with our audience and what we do. And it's great. We have a lot of fun with it. We kind of do a PG version of probably what you do. But with Joey Gallo, who we'll talk about a little later, we're very honest. We're very honest about how we feel. So,
yeah, I'm sure you guys were sad to see Gallo go. I'm sure you were sad.
It was a very sad day. One of my friends made a joke. This guy Aaron, who I'm friendly with, he goes, "What if with Joey Gallo, he goes to now he's with the Dodgers." And they meet the Yankees in the World Series, and he's the MVP. I go, life will be over because I just give up. So,
yeah, you gotta turn your phone off at that point.
That's right. I don't even want to listen to anything anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I'll be shocked if he's on the Dodgers playoff roster. I'll be shocked. I think that's the first step for him out of anything, because I don't know. He's just a different player when he was here, and I don't know going to LA will be any different for him, but we'll see. I wish him well, but we're going to dig into all these MLB trades. Jason's going to stay with us. He's a big Braves fan. Yes. And he's going to dig in, but before we dig into it, we got to do our little DraftKings thing here. So DraftKings changed the fantasy game forever in 2012. Now, 10 years later, they're doing it again with Rainmakers Football, their first ever NFT fantasy game. A new way to enjoy daily fantasy, a new shot to win millions in prizes, and the only NFT fantasy game licensed by the NFLPA. Playing Rainmakers Football is simple. Buy, sell, bid, win player cards of the biggest names in the game through regular drops and auctions. Build your collection of football stars and enter free Rainmaker football contests all season long to compete for millions in jaw-dropping prizes. Mike, I actually have a Tom Brady NFT that I got on DraftKings about a year ago, so I got to see if I'm allowed to buy some other ones there and see how this whole action takes place. You know, my NFTs are going to play against each other. I don't even know how this works. You know, I mean, honestly, because everyone's going to have similar NFTs, you would think, but I don't know. It's like it's the new thing. So the next generation of fantasy sports is almost here. If you download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app now and you sign up with promo code TPPN, that's TPPN, click the Rainmakers tile and opt in so you can be ready for the next drop. Play free for millions in prizes all football season, and build the ultimate NFT fantasy franchise with Rainmakers Football. The promo code TPPN only at DraftKings. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for details. So, I mean, it's interesting concept. I don't know how many people are big into NFTs. You know, I bought, I think, the $25 Tom Brady NFT, and it's selling on the secondary market for like $40, $45 right now.
Look at you doubling your money.
There's a little value to them. So I think, you know, some people are really interested in them. They're like really big into them. So I guess in DraftKings is finding that if they create a game off of it and do it that way. But I don't know. I'll probably see how it is and dabble a little bit. But ultimately, I like our regular fantasy football. So. But we'll dive into our fantasy football at a later show and talk all about that. But I think today it's really big. The MLB draft. The MLB trade deadline has basically just ended. It is 6 o'clock Eastern time that it ended. It's now 6:26 here Eastern time. And the biggest trade of the day, and we'll start there before we get into all these last second trades that are going on, but Juan Soto, Mike, you know, you predicted 2 weeks ago on our show that the Padres would be one of the teams interested in Juan Soto. And today, as it happened, and you basically texted me, look at my prediction. You know, you touted yourself. You jumped, you got on your horse and you were excited and all that fun stuff. So I want to hear a little bit about what you thought about Juan Soto.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and I just want to, it's incredible. And don't forget, it's not just Juan Soto, it's Josh Bell, who also, I think, you know, flew under the radar in this year, what he could bring to them. And then you have Hader. I think that the Padres made out like bandits in this. And someone made a joke to me. If the Dodgers and Padres, you know, if they merge, they would have to start their own league. That's how good this is. They made out, they to me get an A+. You could kind of feel last night in the Mets game that this was his last game. I just had a feeling, you know, a lot of people were talking about the Yankees and Mets, and they have an unlimited salary cap, but it was just about what you were going to give. And the Yankees earlier, they got some pitching and hitting. We'll get into that in a second. They did what they were supposed to do, but Padres, to me, they did everything right. If I look at all these teams right now you take a team that, you know, is kind of at the cusp of the playoffs. This is going to rise them up, and you're getting two elite players. And to me, I did have a feeling about it based on where they were, what they had to do to get to the next level, and it happened. So there you go.
Yeah, Jason, I know you're a big NL East guy, Atlanta guy. Juan Soto is gone. He's out west, but stays in the National League. You know, the Atlanta's key challengers are the Mets, the Dodgers, and probably now the Padres with getting Soto. So what are you thinking about that move for the Padres?
Yeah, I think if the season ended today, I think we would be hosting the Padres in a playoff. So that I actually have Soto in one of my NL only leagues, so I was scared to death he was going to get traded to the American League, but thankfully he's still in the National League, so I still have him. But no, I think it's a good move for San Diego. I mean, you look at who they already have, like with Tatis and Machado. Now you add Soto and Josh Hader, who we'll talk about, I'm sure, to that mix. It's just, man, I mean, they really improved, and they're trying to win now, and I applaud them for that. And, you know, some of the guys they gave up, mean, Mackenzie Gore, he's not really helping him right now. He's injured anyway. I mean, that is a big loss, I think. I mean, the dude was the number one pitching prospect in the majors in 2019. So I think they did give up some pieces, but if you're trying to win now, it's a great move. And Soto controllable next year. But I don't know about you guys. I think subsequently we'll probably see a massive contract come down for Soto here. I mean, that's just my opinion. But
yeah, I mean, they have Machado on a $300 million deal. They have Tatis on I think a $300 million deal.
yeah.
So are they going to throw? I'm guessing like I said last week, Mike, another $500 million at Soto, which hopefully he doesn't turn down this time. But it'll be interesting to see when and if the Padres give him this long-term extension. They still have him under control for 2 more years, so they don't have to make this move right away. But at the same time, with the Nationals offering him that 15-year $440 and turning it down, you would think they don't want to alienate him, make him feel like he's not going to get this big deal and force him to free agency. But he's 23 years old. I think he's okay. Even I think Scott Boras is okay with him even going to free agency, because if he could get the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Mets, the Cubs, the Red Sox, and everybody else to get involved, that you're talking a guy that could not only make $500 million, but who knows, it might go to $600 million the way these contracts are going in baseball. But I think the Padres have put themselves in a really good position. Their starting pitching has been really good this year. I like getting Josh Hader. I don't know, but the Brewers gave up on him. I don't know if they think he's starting to fade or what's going on there, but I thought that was really solid move for them. And then you put Soto in between Tatis, who's coming back from the injury, and Machado. I mean, wherever you slot them, it's probably the best 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5 in all of baseball now. And that's really tough on any kind of starting pitcher, especially like you said, Jason, in a short series and matching them in the playoffs. It's something that you start worrying about. But really, really good trade. Mike, anything else?
Yeah, no, I mean, you look at their lineup now, it's loaded. If you look at like 1 through 5 potential hitters, they're all stars. Cronenworth, Soto, Machado, Bell. I mean, it's crazy. Oh, and Tatis. Like, come on. They have all stars. And it's just, I mean, listen, they set them up. They set themselves up for a lot of success. And I mean, no one could be upset about this trade. It can change. It changes directions of where the Padres are going. And now they have this set lineup. And you know what? These opposing teams are going to have a lot of difficulty.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting stuff. Jason, since we have you on, I know the Braves made a move for, I think, Will Smith is who they got. And
they traded Will Smith away.
Ozzy, right?
Yeah, they traded Will Smith for Jake Odorizzi last night, and they actually just made another acquisition. They got Raisel Iglesias, the Angels closer. So they bolstered their bullpen and got another. I guess Odorizzi's going to start. I mean, I would think. I don't know who you take out of the rotation. Maybe Strider to sort of limit his innings a little bit since he's a rookie, and I think he's already surpassed the innings that he pitched in the minors last year. So that may be what they're trying to do. But the Braves didn't really get an outfielder like I thought they would. I thought they would go after another hitter, but they did not. I mean, they got Robbie Grossman, but I don't really think he's going to do much, to really help the ball club. I'd be shocked if he did. So,
yeah, these trades are coming in like mad here after 6 o'clock. Mike, big one. Yankees send Montgomery to the Cardinals for Harrison Bader. I'm already getting texts from people not understanding it, want to know why we would give up Montgomery, why are we getting an outfielder who's on the injured list, all this other stuff that's coming down. I'll tell you, Montgomery doesn't give you a warm and fuzzy when he's on the mound. I know he's slotted as potential number 3 pitcher and
Right.
maybe a 4, and I think that's the problem. I don't think he's ready to take it to that next level as a one or a 2. But I was surprised that they traded him for an outfielder.
Right, well, you got Benintendi.
Right.
I don't understand that.
Yeah, so I'm guessing he's just an extra outfielder, unless we missed another trade. Maybe Hicks got traded somewhere, but
Yeah.
I'm guessing I don't know too much about Bader. I know he's on the injured list, so I don't have a lot on him. But I'm guessing the Yankees are just looking to strengthen the outfield a little bit, getting Montez in the trade yesterday. Feel they got their number 2 starter, expecting maybe Severino to come back and strengthen it that way. I don't know. What are you thinking?
Listen, I'm still surprised by it because I think the Yankees really had to focus on their pitching. So you have LeCastro also, and I think you're just loading up on outfielders. I don't know if it was the right move. I'm trying to really understand it still. Maybe for, as you said, Vinny, just an extra outfielder to have when it was necessary, but I'm still trying to put my hands on it. I think the Yankees did everything right up to this point, and I'm not saying I'm still debating, and time will tell if this was the right move, but we talked about in previous shows that what you really had to focus on was your pitching, the bullpen, and get that one outfielder, which they did. So now it's just like, okay, what else are you trying to do? So I don't want to undermine it yet, but I guess time will tell. Personally, I would have done that. I would have kept Montgomery, especially with this stage and what's needed with pitching. They need as much pitching as they could get, especially when you get into postseason. But the most important thing for them, as we laughed about with Jason before, was getting rid of Joey Gallo on that bat, that 160 batting average, and now getting a bat that's going to be at least 100 points higher and get you, every bat so important to come in a playoff situation. So the Yankees took care of that. So that was most important. He knew that was going to happen. So
all I know is Aaron Boone gave Joey Gallo every opportunity. Too many opportunities in my opinion.
Nice. He gave him every opportunity. I mean, he really looked out for him.
I've never seen a guy strike out as much as he did on the same pitch. It's the same pitch. It's a 95-mile-an-hour fastball.
Right.
At the letters, and he missed it every time. I've never seen a major league player miss at so many good pitches. I mean, it's one thing to have a bad eye and strike out on bad pitches and not be able to recognize curveballs and all this, but he's got a good eye. Like, he walked a lot. He for a guy that struggled at the plate, he still had that ability to take walks. He just missed the ball. He like I said, he just no longer a major league hitter. I don't know what's happened to the guy, but good riddance to him. I wish him well out in LA. Like I said before the show started, I'd be surprised if he's even on the Dodgers playoff roster as the season goes on. But maybe he'll shock me. Maybe he'll rebound and learn how to hit a strike again, because like I said, it's a guy that's missing strikes. I mean, Jason, you're a Braves guy. You're outside the area. You've seen Gallo play. What were some of your thoughts when you watched it? I mean, what were you thinking?
That poor guy. He couldn't find it this year, man. Normally, now don't get me wrong, Gallo's never been a high average guy. If he hits 212 on the season, it's like, oh, great year, Joey. So, he's good for one thing. He hits nukes, and that's, when you're not doing that, you're not going to last very long on a team like the Yankees. If they hire you for one thing and you're not doing it well, you're going to go. So the Dodgers, it wouldn't shock me if he's the World Series MVP, with the Dodgers, because they have some kind of demon magic out there that make their players, that these are just cast off players, guys like Tyler Anderson or Justin Turner, and they just turn them into all-stars. I don't know how they do it. So it wouldn't shock me if Joey Gallo hits 15 postseason home runs,
Yeah. Jason, I just want to circle back for a second with your Braves. Got a huge series against the Mets next week.
9 games against them this month, I believe.
Everyone's really excited. It could really change the momentum swing for either team. So What do you look at as the key indicators for that series and what has to happen?
Man, well, when you're facing the likes of DeGrom, who just came back, and Scherzer, I believe DeGrom pitches tonight for the first time since he's come off the DL. So you got him, Scherzer. I mean, it's just you got to hope that you catch them on the days where you're not facing Scherzer and DeGrom because –
I'll tell you, Scherzer pitched last night, and it was the Mets' bats. I mean, he had a mediocre game at best. Their bats have been unbelievable at all positions. So, I guess you got to hope for that. But then with the Mets' bats, it's been phenomenal. They're hitting.
Well, when Steve Cohen took ownership of the Mets, and he said, "Well, we're a big market team, and we're going to have a payroll that's commensurate to that." I was like, "Oh crap! Now the Mets are going to be good." No, and they really have that. Alonso, he's just hits bombs one after another. Not to the effect that Aaron Judge hits him. Good Lord, 40. What's he got? 43 already.
43, yes.
But Marte. I mean, they've signed some big time dudes, but I mean, they got big money. They're no different than the Yankees or the Dodgers now, and I think as long as they continue to spend that way, I think they'll continue to be this good. It's just like I say. It's going to just depend on the Braves pitching, if it can hold up. I think, the bats, I think they're fine. Austin Riley, there's a good chance he could be the National League MVP. Matt Olson has gotten really hot. Acuna needs to find his back because he looks like he's swinging a broomstick out there. And if he can manage to do that, then I think, there's a good shot. I don't think anybody has a really good idea who's going to win the division with 9 games against one another this year.
Right. That's why it's such an important series. It really is.
So it'll be really interesting to see if the bats on both sides can stay hot. But, I think it's going to be of what we think. It's going to be 2-1, 1-0 wins, that kind of stuff. It's just Braves Mets, man. You can never tell. But, I don't know. If I had to pick it right now, I'd say the Mets probably win the division just because I think their pitching staff with DeGrom now is I just think it's too strong.
So, I love the honesty of a Braves fan to say that.
It pains me deeply, man, but I would have to bet against it right now.
You look at Scherzer and DeGrom, if they stay healthy. For me, they could be like Randy Johnson and Curt Schilling were for Arizona in the 2001 World Series, where that's all you needed. You didn't need anybody else but them to pitch. And, Randy Johnson pitched an inning of relief on no rest, right? I mean, it's like those are the kind of things that worry you as a non-fan of the Mets and playing against them, that you're going to face those guys and then – Bassett pitches game 3, and then they just come back with Scherzer and DeGrom, game 4 and 5 kind of deal, and not worried about game 6 or even if you're going to get there, because that's just the way they're going to lay it out for the rest of the time. So that's definitely something that's interesting to look at, and it's definitely something to worry about, as we start moving into October. I tell you, I think more about this Montez trade for the Yankees, and I just mentioned Bassett. I don't know what Oakland's really doing. Like when I look at it, and again, I don't know if it's because they're looking to sell the team, they're looking at a new stadium, but they're basically like given up on the entire year. They've traded like every starting pitcher. They've traded everybody. I mean, you got to think as an Oakland fan, like what the F, right? Like, what is going on around here, and why do we even want to come to the game? Like, isn't that like part of like having a team is wanting fans to come out? Like what do you think?
This is like Major League.
I mean, yeah, right. I forgot what exactly why she wanted them to tank, but it's the same reason, right?
Same thing. This is like Major League.
She wanted to move. She wanted to move the team to Miami. And
that's it.
They want to move the team to Vegas, and that's why they're tanking.
That's it. They want to be the Vegas A's. They're gonna build a stadium right next to the Raiders out there.
We'll see what happens with that, Vinny. Like, you know what? You may not be too far off with that, with what they're giving up. Like, just like that.
Yeah, I mean they've given up every single young starting pitcher they have, and if you hear them, you think about the guys they had, they were quality guys. I mean, they had an opportunity with those guys to actually make noise, at least for a wild card, especially with an extra wild card. Starting pitching will get you a long way in baseball, especially now with an extra wild card and the way things are set up. You get yourself to 88, 90 wins, you find yourself in the playoffs. But they basically have given up, where Seattle, on the other hand, who probably, if they don't have that 14-game winning streak before the All-Star break, probably comes out of All-Star break looking more as a seller, and definitely not getting Luis Castillo. But they ended up going that route because they feel they have a shot of making the playoffs for the first time since 2001. And Castillo is going to pitch tomorrow against the Yankees, who they were all in on him. They tried their best to get him, but the Mariners made a better deal. The Mariners traded 3 of their top 5 prospects, and the Yankees just weren't going that route. But what do you think, Mike? You think Seattle makes some noise in the playoffs with Castillo and some of their young pitching?
I think they can, but I think because it's just definitely it's going to help them. I don't think it's a blockbuster type thing. I think one person can only do so much, and I mean it's going to help them, not hurt them. But it will be interesting if they can make a little bit of a run. That's Vinny, with everything what went on with Soto, the Castillo thing was kind of under ropes, right? No one's really talking about. You agree with that? Like no one's really talking about that, but it is important. I mean, it was important for the Mariners, and I think that it's going to help them. But it's just funny how this was someone who the Yankees had on their mind as well, and many other teams, and now he goes to Seattle, and because of the Soto trade, it hasn't really been talked about, so I'm glad that you brought that up. So
yeah, I'm just happy the Red Sox got Tommy Pham now. So if somebody's out of line in their fantasy team, he's going to take care of it for them up there in Boston. Make sure that you stay in line. I guess Mike Trout's fantasy league will be interesting this year, since he'll have a lot of time to manage it with his bad back also. So. a lot of fun things, but I tell you, one of the interesting trades that I saw is the Phillies. I didn't think that they would be buyers going as we went on, but they added David Robertson and they added Noah Syndergaard. So Jason, as an NL East guy again, do you think the Phillies can make any noise by adding a couple guys like that?
Well, Vinny, I think you can thank the expanded playoff for a lot of these teams being buyers when they are, probably not going to make the playoffs, but they're still technically in the hunt with 2 months to go. I think the expanded playoff has made the trade deadline a little bit less exciting. But no, adding Syndergaard, I mean, he's not who he used to be. We know that. His fastball velocity is, way down from where it was when he was healthy with the Mets, when he was pumping at 199. He's averaging 94, 95 on his fastball nowadays. So not the dominant, player who's going to go out and throw at 100 and blow people away anymore. But, he seems to be, getting back to some form of his former self where, he can go out and give you a lot of good innings. So I think the Phillies desperately needed that. And, adding David Robertson shores up their bullpen a little bit. So they are dangerous with the bats. I mean, they do have a bunch of good bats. And I'm just as surprised as you that they were buyers, given that Bryce Harper, is out and just isn't going to be a factor the rest of the season. So I don't know that they'll have enough juice to really make some kind of a run without Harper, their best player. But it is a good move for them. Syndergaard's a free agent after the year, so it's a temporary rental. And if it doesn't work out and they don't make the playoffs, well, then, no big deal. He'll be a free agent anyway. So,
yeah, it's an exciting day here in Major League Baseball. I mean, I just can't believe the amount of trades that were made. I think Jason, you make a good point with the extra wild card now. I think that's why so many teams were making trades. So much going on, a lot more movement than I anticipated. I'm guessing Major League Baseball was ready for it because they were having all kinds of trade special shows today on the major MLB network, ESPN. So I think they were expecting a lot of movement. I'm guessing there was a lot of chatter between teams on what was going on, and a lot has happened. I think the big shocking thing here for us was Montgomery going. I didn't see that happening at all. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out as time goes on. I know there's certain Yankee fans that really did not like him at all. They just felt that he was just a step below from what a true number 2-3 kind of pitcher, and I think he's faded as the second half has gone on. So I don't know if that played into it at all, but again, I looked at Bader's numbers. He's basically a late defensive replacement at this point, right? He's got speed, but he's only like a 250 hitter. A little bit of power, but nothing great. So I think he's just going to fill in if they need a defensive replacement. Maybe if Stanton's playing right field and late in the game, you need to make a move in that kind of way or something to that effect. But we'll see how it all plays out. But I want to jump into the NFL a little bit, and very particular, just one topic, and that's Deshaun Watson, Mike. And we talked about it multiple times on our show. Just a very interesting dynamic here. We can dig into every little piece of things. From the length of suspension, why he was suspended, all this stuff. But I just want to start out and ask you, Mike, 6 games, what did you think when you saw 6 games?
I think it was ridiculous. And I thought that, he was going to get at least a year and a half for what happened. Vinny, we've discussed this. When you have players who have minor drug offenses that are suspended for a year or two, or someone who gambled on one game when they weren't even playing. This is the problem with the NFL, the double standard, right? What makes one act more punishable than the other? And they haven't come up with that. And then, I want to give Matt Carl, who always listens to us, a lot of credit because we had a nice conversation, and he made a great point saying, is something like this going to stop people like us watching the NFL? It's not. It's such a big market. But internally, these players are going to say to themselves, oh, wait a second, why was I suspended for X amount of games for doing this, but this happens? It's just going to cause a lot of chaos and controversy. But I don't think it was I don't think it was appropriate, based on the actions. And I think most people had that kind of sentiment that 6 games was just not enough for those actions. So I know it was really talked about. And I think that especially with these teams now that they came up with their team values and what, the NFL and what it does, it's just an extreme disappointment. So that's my feeling on it.
I heard something interesting, and this is the first case of in the NFL where they brought in the independent judge, right? So the Players Association and the league got together and chose this independent judge to rule. And if you read her ruling, it's based on other incidents that have happened, similar cases. She specifically mentioned, there's things he needs to do to be reinstated. He cannot get in trouble in the future. So there's other things that she did mention in there. But I think it's hard for the NFL and vice versa, the Players Association, and more the NFL, because they're the ones that are going to complain on the ruling, to actually, appeal it right at this point, because it says to everyone, yes, we instituted this new way of how we're going to discipline guys and how we're going to go about things. But if you appeal it and you go against what this independent arbitrator judge made a decision, are you undermining the entire process? And I think it's an interesting question, right? And again, I agree with you. Calvin Ridley was sitting in his house and bet $1,500 on his own team to win. And today he sits out the entire season. He's suspended for the year. There was other players that have been suspended for 12 to 16 to lots of games because of smoking marijuana,
Josh Gordon,
which is now legal in a lot of these cities and states and all this stuff where they play, right? So, there's just a lot more to it than just that. But I think because they've taken it to that next level of this arbitrator and that, I think that's where it gets sticky in the moves. But I agree. I think 6 games was too light compared to what you've seen everywhere else and how they've been suspending players and everything. But I guess at this point, this is the new precedent set, and this is the way they're going to move forward. Jason, I'll turn to you just to, hear what you're thinking about this.
Well, I think the NFL sort of can't get out of their own way with regard to suspensions. None of their suspensions line up. It doesn't make sense case to case. I don't know what the hang up there is or why they can't come up with a streamlined process, but I look at baseball as a really good example of how to discipline players when they screw up. Look at a player like Trevor Bauer, a guy who is not going to face criminal charges, by the way. He will not face criminal charges. He was allegedly sexually assaulted a woman. He will not face criminal charges, and he got 2 entire seasons. And this guy in the NFL supposedly assaults over 25 women and gets 6 games. It's about as, north and south as you can get. And I really don't understand, the difference there, why it's so different between the two sports. Is it money? The Browns are the ones, to me, that I just am sickened by, that they knew all this stuff and they backloaded his contract knowing he was going to be suspended so that when it was done, they could pay him all his money. To me, I look at the Browns as an organization. It makes me sick, because realistically, if this guy, we don't know if what they say is true or not. It's all allegations, right? So I'm not here to publicly hang the guy about any of it, but it's a bad look. It's just a bad look when you're paying a guy $230 million with all those kinds of allegations, and then he only gets 6 games. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah. Oh, there was a lot of settlements also, right? You don't settle things if you're 100% not guilty, right? You would fight it all the way to the end and all that. So, not making any accusations or anything, but there is more to this than it is. And I think you make a good point where the organization needs to take some onus for everything that happened. Probably Houston more than anything as well. They really need to dig into them a little bit, and talking about real quick, Mike, I know we want to end the show with talking about Bill Russell, but before we jump on to Bill Russell, the Dolphins today, they lost their 2023 first round draft pick. They lost the 3rd round pick in 2024. Stephen Ross got fined, I think $1.5 million. He's not allowed to be with the team until October 17th. Basically, he can't attend any league meetings. And this all stems from them, what's the word? Them tampering with Tom Brady and tampering with Sean Payton, which I didn't even know that was an allegation until I read this day. I know the Tom Brady thing, they wanted Flores to actually reach out to him when, during the season, and then there was the allegations that they reached out to him to become part of ownership while he was still on the contract with Tampa. But I didn't realize that they reached out to Sean Payton without getting the Saints' permission. And, there's all these allegations. We know the Brian Flores allegations against Stephen Ross and all that. What did you think when you heard about that today?
I wasn't surprised. But, what really makes me wonder, Vin and Jason, how many other teams are doing this that they haven't been caught, right?
Well,
I think
all of them do it. Yes.
There you go. So that's all I'll say about that. So it's just.
I think the Dolphins made out like a bandit, honestly. I mean, a $1.5 million fine, that's a drop in the bucket. They don't care. It's like, we don't get a draft pick next year? Okay, moving on. They don't care.
Yeah, especially when we just saw the numbers that the Bengals ranked 32nd in value at $2.84 billion. So you can only imagine, like you said, $1.5 million. What does that really mean to the Dolphins and the billionaires of all 32 teams? So it's a good point, Jason. But before we end the show, Mike, I know we wanted to talk a little bit about Bill Russell and some of the things that he meant to the NBA and just in general what he meant to sports. And I think civil rights in the 60s, and there's just a tremendous amount to talk about him. I'll let you start and some of your thoughts on him.
Yeah, I mean, just an amazing talent. I mean, 11 championships, 5 MVPs. He was the first African-American for league, not just league, I think in all sports, he was the first African-American coach. But he was really a trailblazer and just represented the best in basketball, professional career, and his personal life too. As you said, Vinny, that he was advocated for civil rights, social justice, and just, when you ask people about Bill Russell, it's just such positive sentiments about what he did for the league. And just imagine winning 11 championships. I saw a picture of him with all of his fingers that had like rings on it. And it was just really cool to see. And he just loved the game of basketball. He was a mentor for a lot of those. I know he was a mentor to Shaq and many other big men. And it's definitely a loss that it's going to be tough because his influence and legacy will live on forever for what he did and the adversity that he faced. So he was an incredible asset and person to the NBA and just in life.
You know what I found interesting? The one thing I didn't know is that he was 21-0 in game-deciding games, right? Games that would decide a series. He was 21-0, which makes him 11-0 in NBA championships.
Right.
Which when we always talk about Jordan and being 6-0 and all the stuff we talk about Jordan with that. Here's a guy that won 11 and didn't lose any. He's 11-0.
It's incredible.
He could probably be considered the greatest winner in the history of sports. And again, I'm not saying the greatest player. I'm not even saying the greatest NBA player, but I'm saying he could be the greatest winner in the history of sports. I mean, he won NCAA title. He won Olympic titles. He won, like you said, 11 championships. He won at every level and 21-0 in game deciding.
Incredible.
I mean, that's an amazing stat. I mean, it's just incredible. Just a force when it came to being the ultimate team player. Wanted to compete against Wilt Chamberlain. There were stories that he would invite Wilt over his house for dinner before they would play and everything, or the day before, and they got along really well. And then go out on the court and just run him up and down the court as hard as he could and all that stuff. Jason, any final thoughts before we wrap it up here?
Oh, well, I really appreciate you guys bringing me on. It's been a pleasure. I always am game to talk baseball or sports in general. So I've really enjoyed this. And, you guys talk about Bill Russell, man. I mean, that's obviously before my time, but I do try to go back occasionally and just look at guys' stats like Hank Aaron or a Bill Russell or whoever. And like, it's funny, like Bill Russell, something he was famous for was like blocks. And they didn't even track those stats back then. Like the dude could be the all-time NBA leader in blocks if they were tracking it, but we don't know. So it's just, you find little interesting things like that. But for a dude who won as much as he did and averaged 15 points a game, I mean, it's just, it's like you said, it's just incredible. He's just next level good. Like there may never be somebody that shows that kind of dominance in the NBA again. It's pretty crazy. But again, appreciate you so much, both of you bringing us on. So
thank you so much.
Yeah, we really enjoyed it. People, please check out South Endzone Podcast. It's part of the Pigskin Podcast Network. If you actually look at the Pigskin Podcast Network, there's a lot of great shows on there. We're part of the network now. Jason's part of it, so he's our first guest from there. We're looking to bring on some more guests from the network as time goes on, and talking about individual teams and everything. But really appreciate it. Jason, we definitely want to talk some college football betting as it gets closer, because it's something that me and Mike are a little not as knowledgeable on. But so maybe we'll grab some of your bets and piggyback off of it on DraftKings this season.
all right, well, I'll be sure to throw in my disclaimer. This is not betting advice. Do not take betting advice from me.
Again, appreciate the honesty.
You lose it. Yeah, if you lose any money, man, don't come hunt me down.
Don't worry. Me and Mike put enough bets up there on Instagram. That who knows if people take our advice or not. Hopefully, they take Mike's advice and not mine.
Yeah, we have a challenge every year on our show. Who picks? We keep track, and Eric, one of our guys, he won the picks last year. I finished number 2. I finished like dead even 500 on all my bets last year, so didn't lose any money. Pretty crazy.
All right. That's good. All right, Jason, again, thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Check out South Endzone Podcast.
Thanks, guys.
And everyone have a good night. Thank you.
Take care.